Tannon, ever in pursuit of that trophy. You can see the deck list here with our cardboard live extension. As you look over on Tannon Grace's side, we actually have a player bio set up there, something we're working on implementing for more of our players. Check out his deck list, learn a bit more about the Louisiana player.
Yeah, Cardboard Live just keeps getting better and better. Not only can you see a bio for Tannon Grace, you can also see the full standings for all the players right now in day 2. And we're going to try to keep that updated every single round. So whenever you use the Cardboard Live extension, you'll be able to check out how your favorite personalities are doing as well as your friends.
You know, Wilson Hunter really developed a great extension here, and it just gets better all the time.
Right, and I mean the functionality of it it's insane, you know, and the fact that very few people have made anything remotely close to this type of extension is baffling to me because it's so insanely useful.
Oh yeah,
he's gonna be rich.
Looks like we're starting to get underway here. Tannon Grace resolving a mulligan on 6 cards. Basoco has kept 7. Little fist bump for the friends here. Tannon Grace has won the flip, and here's a turn 1 Terramander.
Last week with Brian Gottlieb, I actually called Tannon a walking fist bump emoji.
That's appropriate.
He's proven my point once again.
Basoco is going to have a turn 1 Legion's Landing. Tannon Grace will start turn 2 with an attack with that Terramander. Basoco to 19, and a second Terramander is a play for Grace.
Yeah, and this is a decent start for the mono blue aggro deck, but Tannon really wants here to really apply pressure early on against Basoco, because if Basoco gets off the ground with a lot of these cheap creatures, he's going to transform this Legion's Landing and start making creatures that actually size up really well against things like Terramander. Here, Basoco really valuing that transformation, just not even going to attack and offer the trade of Vampire Token for Terramander. That's how important transforming that Legion's Landing is.
Yeah, Basoco has one of his best draws. Turn 1 Legion's Landing followed by 2 1-drops. Healer's Hawk and Hunted Witness deployed. Looks like he is online to transform that Legion's Landing on the 3rd turn.
Basoco knows the matchup too. You saw him lead on Legion's Landing when he had another 1-drop he could play in hand, arguably a better 1-drop, because there was no Spell Pierce at the ready, no mana up for Pierce, and if Legion's Landing got Spell Pierce, the texture of this game would have changed completely.
Yeah, absolutely. On Grace's side, there's no turn 3 plays, just attacks with one of the Terramanders. Basoco to 18, but no Tempest Shin, no nothing like that.
I mean, that's fairly common from the mono blue aggro deck because they have so many things that operate at instant speed, whether it's Merfolk Trickster or something similar. We're in a spot where Tannon could very easily just sit back and use all the spells in his hand to gain value over the next few turns.
Basoco decides to shove anyway, cast Benelish Marshal. That's hit by Wizard's Retort. That's all well and good, but here's the attack with the 3 creatures and the transform of the Legion's Landing.
Yeah, and this is definitely a spot where Basoco wants to be. He has two lifelinking creatures coming in with the Healer's Hawk and the Vampire. The Terramander is not anywhere close to being able to adapt, so Tannon Grace not really able to apply a ton of pressure. And, even though the Benelish Marshal, one of his better cards, got hit with a counterspell, this is looking pretty bad for Tannon.
Yeah, and Grace hung back with that second Terramander, but actually elects for no blocks here. The 3 creatures come across, 2 with lifelink. Basoco back to 20, Tannon Grace to 17.
It could be because he has a dive down in hand, and he wanted to use that to block like the Healer's Hawk plus dive down, and without the ability to do that because he cast a Wizard's Retort, chose not to block.
And once again, attack with 1 Terramander, very much suggesting, as you said, probably a dive down hanging out in hand. Basoco is to 19, and we're going to go back this way. The floor for his production, now that he has a Adonto with the first 40, he can just start making tokens every turn, though this is a matchup where he probably wants to get on the battlefield in a little more significant way.
Right, and on top of that, though, the Adonto first 4 transforming into a land means he just has access to an extra mana right now on top of generating that 1/1. So a Venerated Luxon here, and he still has enough mana to cast like a 3 or even possibly 4 mana spell if it had Convoke.
Yeah, so he convotes all the creatures.
Baby.
Wow. So got his Loxodon countered, but here is Deputy Detention. There goes the Terramanders.
You know what avenue of interaction Mono Blue doesn't have? Spot removal.
Yeah.
For Deputy of Detention.
And Tannon has seen enough.
Look at that face. That's a man who's dead inside.
I'm smiling, but I'm not happy.
All right, well, let's take a look at the sideboards here. We're going to start off with Tannon Grace. What we got?
Yeah, for Tannon Grace, going to need to spice things up a little bit. He's got options of 3 Negate, 3 Surge Mare, 2 Fairy Duelist, there's some spice, 2 Exclusion Mage, 2 Entrancing Melody, a Search for Escantha, an Essence Capture, and a Deep Freeze.
So this sideboard is specifically built for this type of matchup in mind. Mono blue aggro is naturally good against the slower mid-range decks, the control decks. Things like Spell Pierce, things like Dive Down are very good in those matchups. But against the aggro decks, like this Azorius aggro, there needs to be some significant changes from Tannon's side. You're going to see him bring in Surge Mare, and then Fairy Duelist actually plays a significant role in this transformational sideboard, acting as a way to shrink an opposing creature before blocks mid-combat, straight up eating some of those 1-mana 2/1s. And Fairy Duelist, hasn't really gotten a lot of cred over the last, couple months that's actually been legal in the format. But I believe it was Alexander Hayne had him in his sideboard on his grind up to the #1 mythic rank on Magic Arena. And Fairy Duelist seeing a lot of play this weekend.
And this seems to be a matchup where it will pay dividends.
Oh, absolutely. Aside from that, though, Exclusion Mage coming in, Entrancing Melody, Essence Capture, all these cards are quite good in this matchup. We may even see a Search for Escanta if he wants to transform into like a more controlling role. But you're going to see a lot of those instant sorceries actually come out of his deck in order to fit things like Surge Mare and Fairy Duelist and Exclusion Mage. So there's a chance that he just wants to bring in a bunch of creatures, and that just makes Search for Escanta a bit worse.
Yep. Over on Basoco's side, he has 3 Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants, 3 Baffling Ends, 3 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Tecatli Honor Guard, 2 Negate, an Azorius Guildgate, and a Dovin Grand Arbiter.
A lot of people playing Island in that spot. Brian Basoco knows how important having access to white mana is and choosing to go with the Azorius Guildgate instead. A lot of blue here in the sideboard with the Dovin Bond and the Negates, as well as 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke, so that blue source is needed. Those cards aren't going to be super good in this matchup, though Dovin Grand Arbiter's ability to make 1/1 flyers is a great way to check those 1-mana 1/1 flyers from the mono blue aggro side. And with them tilting towards the flyers versus Mistcloak Herald trimming down to just 3 copies, you're going to see Dovin Grand Arbiter actually put up quite a roadblock for Tannon. Aside from that, Baffling End is phenomenal in this matchup, and that's about it.
Yeah. Not too many options, but the ones he has are powerful, so we'll check in on that in just a minute when they get underway. In the meantime, though, why not check out the sale over on StarCityGames.com, the Magic the Gathering sale. Hundreds of new singles on sale through Monday. Every week it updates on Monday. You can make a little wish list, go fill up your cart, track cards, maybe wait for the opportunity when they go on sale. But there's always some great deals going on with the sale.
Yeah, we got Unhinged Plains over there. That's my baby. I'm going to go buy some right when I get off this round. Curious.
I do like Unhinged Lands. I own my 1 Plains, though.
I own a lot of planes. I own a lot of them.
I think 1 Plains is a play set for me. That's my ceiling. That's my ceiling.
That's when you splash white in your Izzet deck,
yeah,
so that you can use your Arid Mesa to fetch basic planes.
Yep.
Once a millennium. Yeah.
Sometimes you get passed and you pick it up that way.
Yeah, that's true. It's like both players are just about ready here. Tannon Grace is going to be on the play for Game 2. Really needs to come out of the gate swinging. 1-drop into Curious Obsession is definitely a great way to do that. And with Basoco only having 3 copies of Baffling End to really punish it, it could be Tannon's way of stealing a game in a matchup that is not necessarily favorable for him. But as I said, when Ross Merrim and I played this on Versus Live, this particular matchup on Thursday, and the VODs of that will be on YouTube tomorrow, Ross beat me with a mono blue aggro deck, so it can win. And though that game looked like a complete smushing, I'm curious to see if Tannon will be able to battle back.
Jacob Hagan played this match 1 time last weekend, and his opponent just told his team, hey, I'm dead. It started in turn 1. He's like, no, my opponent's made 2 ones for 1. No. I'm in trouble. He even had an Obsession draw and just kind of got run over.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to beat Curious Obsession is to invalidate the extra cards. If your opponent has 2, 3, 4 cards extra drawn over the course of the game, that means they're not playing defense with that creature that they put onto the battlefield.
All right, well, the turn 1s were the same. There was a Terramander versus Legion's Landing, but this time Tannon has 2 Curious Obsessions. He'll come across for 3 and draw 2 cards.
Yeah, and this would be a primo spot for Basoco to have one of those 3 Baffling Ends. If he does, I think the game might end right now.
Yeah, Basoco's at 17. There's a second land. I have a feeling he'd be playing Baffling End a lot faster.
Yeah. You don't have it.
Yeah. Just a Dauntless Bodyguard for the Vampire token and a second Bodyguard for the first.
Yeah, and a triple one-drop draw is still pretty strong here. If Tannon draws a bunch of air and doesn't draw creatures to actually put up a defense to these 2/1s for 1 mana, Basoco could get the leg up. Looks like Tannon actually has a third Curious Obsession. I am curious if he's going to put it on. He chooses not to.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense to diversify at this point. He's already drawing 2 extra cards off of this hit.
Was it, in the great words of the Wu-Tang Clan, diversify your bonds. One of my often quoted Chappelle Show skits.
Basoco to 15.
I broke him.
Grace at 19. Let's see what he has for follow-up. He's just going to pass. Probably sitting on some counter spells.
Yeah, either counterspell, perhaps Merfolk Trickster. This deck does play quite a bit at instant speed once it has the Curious Obsessions going.
Looks like Basoco is trying to go to combat, but there's a Merfolk Trickster for Grace. He's going to tap down one of the 3 attackers, so you won't see the Legion's Landing transform this turn. Like that play a lot.
Yeah, and he's tapping the Dauntless Bodyguard that is being protected by the other Dauntless Bodyguard. I don't know why. Doesn't matter. It's still going to trade Dauntless Bodyguard for a Merfolk Trickster probably. So
right.
Basoco has a tough option here. I don't think you really want to attack in this scenario because you want to guarantee the transform of that Legion's Landing. But Tannon is highly incentivized to trade here. He is going to win this longer game thanks to those Curious Obsession. He doesn't want to burn this dive down because it's a great way to protect from Conclave Tribunal. And he just needs to keep that pressure on with the Terramander with the 2 Curious Obsession and continue to play creatures that will trade or oversize those small creatures from Basoco.
So Basoco did attack with that Bodyguard, and Grace is obliged to take the trade. He does, so no damage coming across. Let's see what Basoco has for a follow-up. Tapping 3 mana. Something like Deputy of Detention on Curious Obsession would be a big swing in Basoco's favor.
Yeah, and you see him, he's tanking. He doesn't want to run into Spell Pierce by playing History Benalia, but I think at this point you have to assume that's not in the deck anymore. If I'm Basoco, I'm casting the thing that gives me the highest chance to win, and it looks like it's going to be Conclave Tribunal targeting Terramander, with Dive Down being basically the only card left that can protect. Unfortunately for Basoco, Tannon has it.
Yep. And we're back on Grace's turn. Just had that double obsession going from turn 2. Still a little bit of work to do in the life total department. As you see, he knocks Basoco down to 12 here, but pretty firmly in the driver's seat, drawing 2 extra cards once again. Yeah,
and here, if Tannon doesn't have another piece of protection, I don't think that's that big of a deal. Basoco's deck doesn't have a ton of removal, and even if he does have the removal for the Terramander, those Curious Obsessions have already drawn, 6 cards?
Mm-hmm. And pretty big swing in Tanner's favor once again. Here's a Tempest Shin. That means he has 2 pretty beefy attackers. Now Basoco has a lot of work to do in the life department front, and there's just 2 problems.
Right, and that's one of the strengths of Tempest Shin. In matchups like this, that 4 toughness provides you with a solid blocker against a lot of these cheaper threats. But in all the other matchups, you have this insanely strong 3-mana attacker that acts as your plan B and does a very good job of being that plan B all on its own.
Mistcloak Herald also deployed for Grace as we go back to Basoco. There's a 4th land.
Yeah, and here Basoco's hand is full of just cards like History Benalia, a second Legion's Landing, and these cards just don't do anything against the current draw from Tannon Grace. You see pretty consistently here that the draws featuring Curious Obsession from the mono blue aggro side just completely changes the texture of all of these games. And the way that Tannon is approaching this game versus game 1 just shows you the range of strength of draws from the mono blue deck and how important Curious Obsession is to the strategy.
There's a second Legion's Landing for Basoco. He'll make it a Vampire and bin the first, followed with History Benalia, but no good attacks, and we're just right back on Tannon's side.
Yeah, and also notably no flyers. So Tannon here could just say, hey, you only have, 6 power on the battlefield, 2 of which is lifelink. I'm just going to turn everything sideways here, play my land for turn so it pumps the Tempest Gen, and that's a 2-turn clock, basically. Ooh, doesn't have the land. That's actually pretty crazy considering how many extra cards he's drawn this game.
Yeah, that is unexpected. Definitely at least picked it up there as he plays 1 post-combat, but 8 coming across, 2 more cards. There's a second Tempest Gen. See what else he has, but I think that Grace has this rolled up.
Well, something off the top like, oh, no, yeah, the game's over. I was going to say Deputy Detention could be quite good, but he has that Terramander as well as the unblockable Mistcloak Herald, so this game is effectively over.
Surge Mare joins the party. Basoco is going to give that one a read. Nice 2 mana 0/5.
Look, Surge Mare blocks, you know.
It does.
And that's important.
Sometimes it attacks, too.
Yeah. When it does attack, it's usually attacking for quite a bit. That, let's see, Flowstone ability, I don't know if there's like it's not fire breathing because you shrink toughness as well as Pump. I guess for you newer generation of players, it's the Frostburn weird ability.
Yeah. Well,
but it's coming in 2s instead of 1s.
You know, it makes me sad to say it, but even Frostburn weird's a little dated now.
Oh, God.
I mean, we're in the Magic Arena age.
Oh, no.
You have to literally reference cards from Ravnica Allegiance.
Dude, it's got the Surge Mare ability. It's the only one that I can think of in Standard.
Yeah.
All right.
Surge Mare has Surge Mare.
All right, so we're going to go back to the drawing board here. Basoco, I think, has basically done, or basically is going to do no changes here. You know, player and draw, cards like Baffling End, Dovin Grand Arbiter are going to be fairly strong. And Tannon Grace's side of things, you know, I think a lot of his measures are going to be defensive in nature after this game because things change when you're on the draw for the mono blue aggro deck. He's going to have to keep a smaller range of hands as starters for 7, because if he has a slower draw that's kind of leaning on Curious Obsession, there's a chance that he just gets run over by a triple 1-drop draw, including a Legion's Landing, and then followed up with a Banalish Marshal from Basoco.
Yeah. In the feature match area here, Basoco and Grace are playing 2 pretty fun aggro decks, and honestly, the standard format's the best we've seen in a while. And if you're looking for a place to play, maybe check out Star City Games Game Night. You can get unique tokens and sleeves. We have Yeti Steady Go going right now for the month of February.
Now, I talked quite a bit how much I like Yeti Steady Go, and you're going to see that all throughout the month of February, and you can get that at go.starcitygames.com/game night and check where you can find a game night near you.
I wish they could have changed the URL to YetiSteadyGo.StarCityGames.com. That would have been a nice touch.
Oh, you. All right, both players shuffling up here. Obviously, they're friends. They drove up together, both from Louisiana. If you want to know a little bit more about Tannon Grace, make sure to check out his bio in the Cardboard Live extension. And, of course, Cardboard Live working on mobile as well. Not a lot of extensions work on mobile, so I'm very happy that Wilson Hunter was able to get that to work. Click the little puzzle icon next to your chat box, and you'll be able to take a look at that. On top of that, you'll be able to see both players' deck lists. You know, you might even see a thing or two about, the sideboard, specifically what we were talking about earlier. You know, the White Winnie deck on the play, going to need those Baffling Ends to contain some of those explosive draws from the mono blue aggro deck. Didn't have it in Game 2. Could play a huge part in Game 3 if he's able to stifle Tannon's development.
You know, mono blue aggro was a deck that I was actually pretty into preparing for the Indianapolis Open. It was a deck, when everyone was talking about Wilderness Reclamation, I wanted to be on a deck that could really heavily leverage Spell Pierce and stuff like that. But this right here is one of the biggest tests for the deck, being on the draw against another aggressive deck.
Right, and that's the thing, right? When Spell Pierce is good, mono blue aggro is good, but at the same time, any aggressive deck that has a bit of disruption is going to be pretty good, including Azorius aggro, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's done so well in the opening weeks of this new standard format. That blue splash is nothing to sneeze at. Access to Disdainful Stroke, Negate, occasionally Spell Pierce, all great defensive tools for stopping those big Wilderness Reclamation decks. On top of that, though, Deputy Detention, just a huge card for the deck, giving you a creature that locks down some of those really explosive draws that feature 2 copies of the same card.
Sigh Relief for Grace looks like he has kept on 7. Basoco is going to 6 here. See if you can come up with a 6-card hand that he likes. I know that
that was a good Hello Darkness right there. You know, he just had that look in his eyes like, man, I really hope he doesn't triple 1-drop me. I'm really glad he's mulling to 6, but this can go bad.
I know that Jacob Hagen basically said that the only way he was losing really any games was when he kept 1 land hands. So he mulliganed pretty aggressively with the Azorius aggro deck last weekend.
That's really impressive, actually, considering how often we saw in the top 8 of the previous Pro Tour, Andrew Ellenbogen, LSV, players like that. There were 6 copies of this white base aggressive deck featuring Legion's Landing. And as far as I could tell, there were quite a few games from both sides where both players occasionally kept one-landers and leaned super hard on Legion's Landing. I am under the impression that flooding with the deck is a death knell. Whereas having a one-lander, occasionally you draw out of it, and your hand is just all spells. And when you also have convoke cards like Conclave Tribunal and Venerated Luxodon, that means that a lot of times those one-drop heavy hands with one land are okay.
I will say that one time he showed me an opener that was 5 planes, Snub Horde, Century, History of Benalia, and I was like, if you keep that hand, you're off the team. That is not happening.
Well, I got a little story for you, Ryan, because I was standing right behind you in the semifinals when you showed your 7-card hand to both of your teammates, including Liz Lynn, that featured Island.
Yep.
Mishra's Bobble.
I told them that if they asked me to mulligan, I would. I said, if either of you ask me to mulligan, I will. And neither of them did.
Both of them basically said effectively LOL.
Yep.
And I almost busted out laughing. I almost said something, but it would have been outside assistant. But I almost just kind of popped in the back of the head. Like, what are you doing? You're better than this.
I just really believed in my team,
Yeah, well, you needed to.
It worked
out.
If
you're going to keep that hand, you need to.
Scoreboard, man.
Yep. No, that was the finals. That wasn't the semifinals.
It was the finals.
Yeah, I forgot I was spotting for the finals, and then once we got to a certain point, I was no longer needed.
Basoco is going to be looking at a 5-card hand here. See if he can finally keep one, though.
These are the ones you win, Tannon. You're getting a freebie on this one. Basoco looks like he's going to keep. Not happy about it. Let's see if he can put up a fight here on 5 cards against Tannon Grace's mono blue aggro.
Yeah, a 1-1-1 or a 1-2-3 curve could still be pretty good here.
Yep. Looks like he has one. Sky Marcher Aspirant to play. Let's see if Tannon has a follow-up.
All right, it's turn 1. Once again, Siren Stormtamer this time. Not the Terramander, but pretty dang similar.
Yeah, and I think there's a very good chance Tannon ends up trading here. There's a lot to be said about someone who's mulligan to 5 and you're on 7. And even if he has a Curious Obsession, there's a chance he just needs to make sure that something like double 1-drop, including a Legion's Landing on this turn, doesn't give Basoco the boost he needs to actually get back into this game on that mold of 5.
Mm-hmm. I like the attack from Basoco. He just knows he needs to connect for points here, and Grace is not going to block. Ooh, and there's no follow-up.
Yeah, no play from Basoco. I don't think he has a land in hand either, so there's a chance his hand is just full of History of Benalia or something like that. And if he doesn't have a play next turn, he's going to let Tannon kind of run away with it.
Stormtamer comes across from 1, Basoco to 19, and here's a Surge Mare.
That's actually a pretty good reason not to trade with the Siren Stormtamer, because you want your Surge Mare to do a lot of the heavy lifting as far as defense is concerned, and you need to keep that bit of pressure on the battlefield to turn on things like Chart of Course as well as Curious Obsession.
Big turn 3 for Basoco. There's a 3rd Plains, and History of Benalia is deployed. Notably, the Surge Mare does a reasonable job at blocking the Knight tokens, but it's about the most damage output for 1 card in Basoco's deck.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Surge Mare is a card that has actually started to see a bit of main deck play from some of these mono blue aggro decks in the best of 1 ladder on Magic Arena, because it does survive all those burned spells from the mono red decks that are so popular.
Well, there was another attack with a Stormtamer, Basoco to 18, and Tempest Djinn. Nice curve for Tannon.
Yeah, this is also not a bad spot for Basoco if he has a good turn here. He gets Chapter 2 of the History of Benalia. If he plays a plays a threat like another History of Benalia or some creature, followed by a Conclave Tribunal or a Venerated Luxodon, there's a chance that he's just going to overwhelm Tannon's draw.
Yeah, we'll see what he has on his turn 4. Still a couple cards left over. Remember, he did mulligan to 5. No blue mana, so you won't see a Deputy Detention without him playing a land first.
Yeah, this is a pretty tight spot. Basoco's going to need some help in a hurry. Sky Marcher Aspirant is not a bad card, but this is not the time or place for it.
Yeah, there's a second copy of that one, and 4th Basic Plains.
His last card has to be another land. Any permanent would give him the city's blessing and allow Sky Marcher Aspirant to fly and potentially trade off with something like Siren Stormtamer or potentially even double block that Tempest Gem.
Yeah. Aspirant was a card that kind of added to the deck after week 1 of the format to fly over decks like Sultai with their Branch Walkers, though notably the mono blue aggro deck is pretty flush with flyers, so it's at kind of its worst in a matchup like this.
Right. For me, I am a huge fan of playing all 4 Hunted Witness, and Basoco agrees. I think that card is criminally underplayed in the archetype, often overlooked because it only has 1 power versus the 2 power from the others.
Yeah, there's definitely situations where you want to be attacking proactively with your Legion's Landing, or there's removal spells, and the Hunted Witness really carries its weight.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just want a maximum number of 1-drops, and we see Basoco here even going so far as to play 2 copies of Healer's Hawk to go with those other 16 1-drops in Aspirant, Hunted Witness, Dawn's Bodyguard, as well as the very powerful Legion's Landing.
Grace has a curious obsession. That's going on the Tempest Gen.
And he's putting on the Tempest Gem because that one represents the most damage. He wants to make sure he's chunking in, able to close the game before Basoco's able to draw out of this mulligan to 5.
No pre-combat land, so the Gen's going to rumble across for 4, Basoco to 14. Grace will draw a card.
Basoco's not out of it yet. Still has a shot. It all depends on what he draws over the next few turns and whether or not Tannon's able to put up a bit of defense. But Entrancing Melody here, a really powerful sideboard card. 2 mana able to steal one of those Knight tokens, and the History of Benalia no longer looking nearly as threatening.
Yeah, that specific interaction, Entrancing Melody versus History of Benalia, is kind of the reason the card really started seeing a lot of standard play, and you just see how powerful it is.
Right. Yeah, the Izzet Phoenix and Drake decks from last season were having a bit of trouble beating Adonto Vanguard, so they started moving towards Entrancing Melody as a means of just stealing it outright because the red spells didn't actually kill it. But now that Hydroid Krasis is becoming a huge part of this format, you can steal Hydroid Krasis for 4 mana. It's a pretty huge swing. We're seeing a lot more of Entrancing Melody around town.
So Basoco is going to hit Chapter 3 on the history. He'll attack with his leftover Knight token and both of the Aspirants. Grace is going to put Surge Mare in front of the 4-3. That block makes plenty of sense. See if he wants to do anything about the Aspirants as well.
Tell you what, Basoco's making a big trade here. I'm pretty sure his follow-up is going to be Glacial Fortress into Deputy of Attention on that Tempest Gen.
So Tannon blocks both of the other creatures,
no,
and it's not just basic planes for Basoco.
The shields were down. That was primo spot for Basoco to get back in this game. Unfortunately, you're seeing the downside of splashing a color in this mostly white Azorius aggro deck.
No 4th land still for Tannon. He'll attack for 4, but that means his hand is full of spells, and he's just ahead on the table already. Yeah,
being ahead on spells and ahead on the battlefield means that this game is elementary at this point. Even if Basoco is able to take down that Tempest Gen in the next turn or 2, the damage is already done. It's hit for a couple of cards, and it's a big body. The Surge Mare playing defense means Tannon Grace is still super high at a padded 18.
Siren Stormtamer added to the field that can block against any kind of removal effect on the Tempest Gen, and Basoco just has a Legion's Landing on his turn, doesn't even have 3 creatures to pair with it. Merfolk Trickster, Tannon Grace is going to take this one down 2-1.
Yeah, and we actually should have a time shifting match for y'all. We're still pretty easy in the round. We're going to have Allison Warfield versus Austin Yost. We're going to bring